When a silent Sigma male withdraws completely, the world around him doesn't notice the exact moment it happens, only the aftermath. His presence fades like a light dimming slowly, not abruptly, and yet the shift is unmistakable to those who once relied on his steadiness. He stops engaging in conversations that go nowhere. He stops reacting to people who mistake access for entitlement. He moves differently, quieter, colder, not out of anger, but out of awakening. It's the kind of withdrawal that comes after too many observations, too many unspoken conclusions, too many moments where he realized he was giving more than he ever received. His silence is not passive. It is the signal that something inside him has realigned. As he pulls inward, everything becomes sharper. The motives of others, the imbalance he tolerated, the energy he wasted. And with this clarity, detachment becomes effortless. He no longer asks what went wrong. He simply understands what no longer fits. People who took him for granted feel the emptiness first. The emotional stability he quietly provided evaporates. Routines falter. Dynamics shift. Tensions rise. His absence becomes a mirror reflecting the truth no one wanted to see. He was holding more together than anyone realized. And this is where the transformation begins. When a Sigma male withdraws completely, he isn't disappearing, he's rebuilding. He's stepping out of noise and re-entering alignment. He's rewriting his priorities in silence. He's choosing evolution over attachment. And when he returns, he will not be the version they remember. If this resonates with your path, subscribe to Silent Wise, where the quiet ones finally get decoded. In the comments, answer this. Do you withdraw to protect your peace or to rediscover your power? Drop the word unseen if you've ever rebuilt yourself in silence. He becomes emotionally weightless, detaching from everything that once pulled at his energy. There comes a moment in a silent Sigma male's life when the emotional gravity that once held him down simply loses its force. It doesn't happen suddenly, and it doesn't happen loudly. It begins with a subtle shift, a growing distance inside him, a quiet awareness that he has been anchored to people, habits, and environments that constantly drained him while giving nothing in return. He doesn't explode, he doesn't announce his departure, he doesn't negotiate for change. He simply begins to rise above the noise. Emotional weightlessness is not a feeling of emptiness, it's a feeling of release. He feels the cords of old expectations loosen, the pressure of forced connections dissolve, and the burden of explaining himself disappear. He watches the world around him continue in its chaotic rhythm, but he no longer feels obligated to synchronize with it. This weightlessness gives him something he hasn't felt in a long time: perspective. When he detaches, he sees clearly who relied on his stability and who relied on his silence. He notices how often he carried emotional responsibility that wasn't his. He realizes how much energy he gave to situations that were already dead. And rather than feeling guilt for stepping back, he feels relief, the kind that arrives when a truth is finally accepted instead of resisted. It's the moment he understands that staying was costing him more than leaving ever could. As he becomes emotionally weightless, he stops fighting for space in places that never had room for him. His conversations become shorter. His reactions fade. His presence becomes quieter, colder, more focused. Not because he's shutting down, but because he's reclaiming energy that was never meant to be spent on proving his worth. The emotional noise that once clouded his judgment fades into the background, and in its absence, he hears his own intuition again, sharp, confident, unmistakable. This is the beginning of his disappearance, the moment he no longer feels tethered to anything outside himself. His intuition takes full control, guiding him away from anything misaligned with his growth. When a silent Sigma male withdraws completely, a shift happens inside him that most people will never see coming. His intuition stops whispering and starts leading. For years, he may have tried to compromise, to stay patient, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to tolerate environments that drained him slowly. But once he detaches, all the noise that once blurred his instincts fades, and what remains is an inner voice that is sharper, colder, and unmistakably honest. His intuition becomes the compass that guides every step he takes from that moment forward. It tells him who is genuine and who isn't. It shows him which paths expand him and which shrink him. It reveals the truth behind people's smiles, their intentions, their inconsistencies, their demands. And he doesn't resist it anymore. He trusts it fully. This shift is not emotional, it is evolutionary. His intuition is not built on fear or pain, but on accumulated observation, the kind most people ignore because it's easier to stay blind than to face reality. But he doesn't flinch. Once his mind becomes still, patterns he overlooked become obvious. Behaviors he dismissed now make perfect sense. Energy he tolerated now feels unbearable. His intuition becomes a filtration system, separating what belongs in his life from what never should have been there in the first place. And he follows it with a precision that seems almost supernatural to those watching him drift away. As intuition takes the lead, he stops holding on to anything that slows him down. He no longer forces conversations that feel heavy. He no longer entertains relationships that require him to shrink. He no longer participates in dynamics that drain his potential. Instead, he begins to move through the world with a quiet decisiveness that unsettles anyone used to having access to him. There is no hesitation, no second guessing, no emotional tug-of-war. His path becomes clear, not because someone showed it to him, but because he finally allowed himself to see it. And once he aligns with that internal guidance, anything misaligned with his growth naturally falls away, unable to hold on to a man who is finally moving toward himself. He stops responding, creating a silence that exposes every hidden motive around him. When a silent Sigma male withdraws completely, his silence becomes more than a pause. It becomes a mirror. The moment he stops responding, the world around him shifts in ways most people never expect. His absence of reaction is not passive. It is deliberate, strategic, and revealing. People who once relied on his steady presence suddenly have nothing to read, nothing to feed on, nothing to manipulate. The emotional cues they used to track are gone. The reassurance they depended on evaporates. And in that void, their true intentions begin to surface with startling clarity. Silence is the Sigma's most powerful diagnostic tool. When he steps back, he watches how people behave without the comfort of his attention. Those who were genuine remain steady. Those who valued only his usefulness become desperate. Those who hid self-serving motives start to panic. Some try harder, thinking pressure will pull him back. Others become irritated, revealing entitlement they previously masked with warmth. And the ones who feared being exposed go silent themselves, terrified that their patterns are now visible. His lack of response becomes a psychological test no one knows they're taking, and no one can fake their way through. As the silence stretches, the Sigma doesn't need confrontation to understand people's character. He sees everything in the way they react to losing access. He sees who respects distance and who feels threatened by it. He sees who was anchored by his steadiness and who only stayed because they believed he could be controlled. This is why his silence is never empty. It is a form of intelligence gathering conducted without a single word. It reveals what months of conversation could never uncover. And as motives rise to the surface, jealousy, insecurity, dependence, resentment, or genuine care, he finally understands the truth of each connection. In that clarity, he makes decisions that are final, unspoken, and impossible to reverse. Silence didn't just expose everyone around him, it freed him from them. His priorities sharpen, and he cuts ties with anything that no longer fuels his evolution. When a silent Sigma male reaches the point of complete withdrawal, something profound happens inside him. His priorities sharpen with the precision of a blade. The noise, distractions, obligations, and emotional debts that once cluttered his inner world fall away as if someone cleared the fog from his vision. He sees his life not as a collection of relationships, routines, and expectations, but as a trajectory, a path that either elevates him or traps him. And with that clarity, he begins to cut ties with anything that no longer contributes to his evolution. There is no hesitation, no apology, no lingering attachment. Growth becomes the only criterion, and anything that does not pass that filter simply cannot stay. This sharpness is not born from coldness, but from awakening. He recognizes how many of his past choices were shaped by obligation, loyalty, or compassion rather than alignment. He sees how often he held on to people because of history, not harmony. He realizes that certain environments kept him stagnant, certain conversations kept him small, and certain habits dulled the edge of his potential. And once a Sigma sees this truth, he cannot unsee it. He begins pruning his life the way a master craftsman shapes a piece of art, removing the unnecessary to reveal the essential. Social circles shrink. Responsibilities simplify. Mental clutter dissolves. What remains is only what moves him forward. Cutting ties is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of recalibration. He is no longer willing to carry the emotional weight of others. He is no longer available for dynamics that drain more than they give. He is no longer interested in people who fear his silence more than they value his presence. His world becomes quieter, but also purer. Every decision becomes intentional. Every step aligns with the man he is becoming, not the man he was pressured to be. And those who once depended on him, used him, or ignored him notice the shift immediately. His distance feels final because it is. He doesn't leave with anger, he leaves with clarity. And in that clarity, he evolves faster than anyone realizes, because nothing accelerates a Sigma male's growth like removing everything that was holding him back. He disappears psychologically long before he physically leaves the environment. Long before anyone notices the distance in his footsteps or the absence in his presence, a silent Sigma male has already vanished in the only place that truly matters, his mind. This psychological disappearance is quiet, seamless, and nearly impossible to detect until it is complete. It begins when he reaches the threshold of emotional exhaustion, when he realizes he has stayed too long in a place where he can no longer grow. He doesn't announce his retreat. He doesn't create conflict to justify his exit. Instead, he withdraws inward, shifting his attention away from the people and dynamics around him and redirecting it toward his internal world. Conversations lose their meaning. Obligations lose their grip. Familiar routines begin to feel foreign. He becomes a ghost long before he ever walks out the door. People around him often mistake this withdrawal for stress, distraction, or temporary disengagement. They assume he will snap back once circumstances change. But what they fail to understand is that once a Sigma male's mind detaches, his emotional contract with the environment dissolves entirely. He no longer invests, no longer anticipates, no longer hopes for the dynamic to improve. He begins observing instead of participating, conserving energy instead of sharing it, and analyzing what once simply happened around him. His silence becomes more frequent. His reactions flatten. His eyes become distant even when he's physically present. It is the calm before an exit that has already occurred internally. This psychological departure is his way of preparing for the final step, a transition that is smooth, clean, and irreversible. By the time he physically leaves, He has already grieved the connection, processed the lessons, and accepted the outcome. There is no second guessing, no emotional tug-of-war, no lingering attachment. He walks away with a quiet certainty because the true departure happened weeks, months, or even years earlier. And this is why people are always shocked by how effortlessly he disappears. They never realized he had already left the moment he stopped feeling anchored to the space. His inner world becomes his refuge, where he rebuilds identity, purpose, and direction. When a silent Sigma male withdraws completely, the world outside may assume he is shutting down, but internally, something far more powerful is unfolding. His inner world becomes the sanctuary he returns to, not out of fear or avoidance, but out of necessity. It's the only place untouched by noise, expectation, or emotional debt. Here, in this private mental landscape, he begins to rebuild himself piece by piece. He revisits old wounds, not to reopen them, but to finally clean them. He studies past versions of himself, the way one studies an unfinished blueprint, not with regret, but with intention. Every moment of solitude becomes raw material for transformation, sharpening the edges of his identity while softening the places he once hardened for survival. His silence is not emptiness. It is reconstruction. In this inner refuge, he feels the first sense of control he has had in a long time. The distractions that once diluted his purpose are gone. The voices that once swayed him fall silent. His intuition becomes louder, his clarity sharper, his direction unmistakable. He begins asking questions he never had space to ask. What kind of man is he becoming? What kind of life does he want to build? What energy will he allow near him again? These questions aren't answered in words, but in shifts. Shifts in discipline, in priorities, in the way he carries himself. His internal world becomes a forge, and the isolation becomes heat. He emerges from each period of reflection stronger, more grounded, and far more certain of who he is. As days pass, the transformation becomes irreversible. The identity he lost in the noise begins to reappear, but upgraded, calmer, more strategic, more aligned. His purpose, once diluted by the needs of others, becomes potent again. His direction crystallizes with a precision that makes his next steps inevitable. And while outsiders may assume he is lost in thought or emotionally distant, the truth is far more powerful. He is rebuilding a self that cannot be manipulated, drained, or derailed. His inner world becomes the source of a strength no one sees forming, until the moment he returns, unrecognizable to anyone except himself. He re-emerges transformed, calmer, colder, and immune to the patterns that once trapped him. When a silent Sigma male returns after withdrawing completely, he does not come back as the version people remember. Something about him has shifted so profoundly that even his presence feels different. The storm that once churned beneath his surface has settled into a quiet, controlled force. His calmness is no longer just a trait, it's a shield forged from everything he survived alone. The emotional triggers that used to drain him now pass through him without landing. He no longer reacts, he no longer absorbs, and he no longer entertains patterns that once held power over him. The world sees a colder man, but what they are truly witnessing is a man who has taken full ownership of his energy. Every step he takes is intentional. Every word he chooses is measured. His silence, once misunderstood its distance, now speaks with the authority of someone who rebuilt himself in the dark. He no longer engages in cycles that require emotional labor without reciprocity. He doesn't chase, convince, or explain. The version of him who once stretched himself thin no longer exists. People who once manipulated him through guilt or inconsistency now find their tactics irrelevant. They are pushing against a wall that does not move. His transformation becomes visible in subtle but unmistakable ways.
He sets boundaries without raising his voice. He walks away without looking back. He chooses solitude over chaos, clarity over comfort, and truth over attachment. Even the air around him feels heavier, steadier, as if he carries a new center of gravity that cannot be shaken. He has learned to see people as they are, not as he hoped they would be. He has learned that peace is not something given, it is something protected.
By the time he re-emerges, he is no longer surviving patterns. He is above them. The world he steps back into has not changed, but he has. And once a Sigma reaches this level of calm, cold clarity, nothing and no one can pull him back into the traps that once claimed him. He has become untouchable. When a Sigma male reaches this level of detachment, he doesn't announce it, justify it, or seek applause for it. He simply moves differently, quieter, sharper, more aligned with the life he's actually meant to live. And everyone who once took his presence for granted eventually feels the shift, not because he punished them, but because he reclaimed himself. His silence becomes the final chapter, and his evolution becomes the next story he writes. If you've ever felt this transformation inside you, that moment when your peace became non-negotiable, tell me in the comments, I choose clarity. And before you go, subscribe to Silent Wise for more deep psychological insights into the mind of the Sigma male.